What's up, fellas? Let's freaking go. It's time for Wake Up Mintzy, presented by the fine folks of Dude Wipes. We're fired up to be in here. It's Thursday morning. The vibes are high. Summertime Chicago. Got some momentum, feeling some heat. And as always, Wake Up Mintzy, presented by the fine folks of Dude Wipes. Already used Dude Wipes this morning. You should too. One use of Dude Wipes will change your life. It's an amazing product. You'll never need dry, crappy, scratchy toilet paper again. Amazon, Walmart, Target, nationwide. Dude Wipes, join the revolution. They're taking over the toilet paper world. I'm going to slug some Stella Blue coffee. I'm fired up this morning. I mean, I know I'm usually a pretty fiery guy, but I'm really feeling some heat. All right. Got my Stella Blue coffee in. Now, fun show this morning. I'm super excited because we're about to be joined by Tulane Green Wave new football coach John Sumrall on here. Wake Up Mintzy's going super hardcore football. We're in the middle of July. Look, if you want to talk football, we're going to be doing it every dang day on here going forward. We're getting ready for the season. We got some big guests booked, and excited to be joined by Tulane coach John Sumrall. A bunch of Barstool stuff going on as well. I got the ice cream sign up because I'm serving ice cream later today for my second grade test for Mitzi Madison. I have to make correct change. I think I did an okay job on that sign, to be honest. And then a British Open just starting. Justin Thomas, or the Open Championship, Justin Thomas leading 3 under. Kind of surprised by that. He's been struggling a little bit, but good to see him back on leaderboard. Hope everybody saw Dave Portnoy last night on stage in Foxborough at the Patriots Stadium, wearing his Teddy Bruschi jersey, singing Revival with Zach Bryan. Dave looked like he was having a time. And finally released the Jazz Fest video log yesterday, and hey, boys, we caught some heat. I mean, we at least Dave and Big Cat liked it, so shout out Corey Rutledge. He helped me edit it. That thing was a bitch to edit. We had the copyright music stuff to deal with. We had to send it back like 7 times. It was, of course, it's ironic when I do a video log. I do it all music one for Jazz Fest. I can't use any of the music, but still, it was really good. Had a lot of fun showing clips of me doing the bar mitzvah dance, the Andy Frasco Super Jam, and, it was good. It was good. All right, we're going to be joined now by Coach John Sumrall. What's up, Coach? How are you this morning? Excited to have you on Wake Up Mintzy, and excited about having you in New Orleans at Tulane football. What's going on?
Pretty good.
Yes, sir. Glad to have you. Thanks for joining us this morning, and just pumped. I lived in New Orleans for 6 years, and my grandfather went to Tulane. I like to support the Tulane football program, and I got to be honest, I was really excited when they hired you a few months ago, or after the season. You're coming over from Troy, winning 2 conference championships in the Sun Belt, and there's a lot of enthusiasm around Tulane football after the last couple of years. You're coming into a super hot program, coming off that Cotton Bowl win over USC 2 years ago, where they beat Caleb Williams, and they won the American Athletic Championship last year, made the American Athletic Championship game. So it seems like a pretty good situation.
Yeah, the momentum's real. The trajectory of their program right now is high. It's been fun to watch what's happened the last couple of years from afar. In college football, you watch what everybody's doing. And I was an assistant here over a decade ago, and so always have been proud of Tulane when they've had success. And we're trying to build upon that. We've got a really good opportunity to capture the momentum that's already been started. The 12-team playoffs are a real thing now, so we've got an opportunity. We've got access that we all want, and I think it's a great time to be a Tulane football fan for sure, man.
I agree, and I followed this program through the years, and I know when you were there 10 years ago, the defensive coordinator, that was back when they played their games in the Superdome. They built Ullman Stadium on campus, and I believe it opened in 2018. And can you talk a little bit about what the difference that's bringing to the program?
Yeah, it's made a huge difference. Yeah, Ullman opened in 14, so this is actually the 10-year anniversary. No, you're good. But it was my last year. So my first 2 years here, we played in the Dome. And in 13, we went to the New Orleans Bowl. It was the first bowl game Tulane had gone to in over a decade. And then moved into the stadium here in 14, Ullman. And, college football is meant to be played on campus. That's a part of the pageantry, the camaraderie, the excitement, the tailgating, the boozing, the grilling out, all that stuff. That's what makes it fun. And to be able to bring it back on campus here at Tulane, and you go back years ago, old Tulane Stadium, that we hosted the Sugar Bowl here on this campus for a long time and hosted a Super Bowl. And so it means something different when you have college football on the campus. It's a really cool experience. It's a great family experience. You can obviously party anytime you're in New Orleans, but the stadium size here also lends itself to making sure it's a family environment and good atmosphere.
Now, and look, I'm a big believer in it. I've been to a bunch of games there. And when you go to Ullman, it's like an intimate setting, but I mean, it gets pretty packed. I love on that second level, they have that whole suite level that's like encompasses the whole sideline. And, I don't know. I mean, look, if you hadn't been to a game at Tulane, there's no stadium serving better food in the country. I mean, they're serving Galatoire's and all the top New Orleans stuff up there. They got superior margaritas. It's really easy. It's on campus, as you said. It's like a super fan-friendly experience. It's like easy to park. You get in, you get out. It's a whole different deal than going to the Superdome. And I went to the game last year. I'm an Ole Miss guy, and the Ole Miss Tulane atmosphere for that game, the second Saturday of September last year, I mean, you couldn't even move in there. It was so packed and so hot. And, it's been so fun to see how much the Tulane fans have embraced it. I mean, they've been getting really good crowds, and there's just an enthusiasm with the program that's infectious. And before I get into the personnel and your background, I want to mention Tulane's doing really well in the NIL world. This is a new world of college football. I know Jimmy Ordno real well, which is actually how I got Coach on this morning. But I think the Fear the Wave Collective is doing a great job. You're seeing Tulane, recruiting well, high school, also getting a lot of guys out of the transfer portal. How do you feel Tulane's NIL is doing?
Yeah, you hit on two things there that I think are critical. One is the Glazer Club. You talked about the suite area. That's actually where I am. And I didn't know they were serving Galatoire's, or I might have to take a long time out and come up here because I was at Galatoire's Saturday night. If that's what they're serving for food up here, I'm going to probably have to take a TV timeout and make a trip up here during the game. But, man, Fear the Wave Collective, Jimmy Ordno, Michael Arata, those guys have positioned us to be at the top of the G5 level without question. We just had a huge fundraiser this past Monday night at Rizzuto's and raised a bunch of money for our collective. This day and age, new world. The transfer portal and NIL came into existence at the same time, and without an organized collective, without a really good NIL initiative, you've got no chance in college football now. I mean, I thought it was really interesting the other day at Big 12 Media Days. Dave Aranda, they asked him, "Hey, how are y'all recruiting so well right now?" And he said, "Well, we're paying players." So, I mean, you can put together a quality team, retain a quality team. We're not going to maybe outbid the SEC schools. We know, we don't maybe have that kind of capital resources. But what Jimmy and Michael have done through Fear the Wave has really set us apart at this level, I think. And it's not just the financial compensation component, but it's the connectivity piece to where our players get connected to the New Orleans community to different initiatives like Son of a Saint. And they also get to have mentorship opportunities with alumni people. And, when you talk about connecting and engaging with Tulane alumni, you're talking about really successful people who can help you for life after football. So I'm grateful for what Jimmy and Michael have done. Quite honestly, when I went through the interview process here, had that not been in place the way it was, I don't know that I would have been as interested in this opportunity. And so those guys have done a great job and blown away with how much groundwork they had already laid before we got here, and it's just continued to grow and expand.
Yeah, and shout out to those guys. So I've actually I've hosted a lot of the Tulane football team out at Hogs for the Cause, which is a huge barbecue and music fest that raises millions of dollars for families fighting child cancer. And Tulane, the football teams come out there, and we fed them and had a good time out there with them the last 2 years. And so I certainly want to keep that going. One thing that's interesting about Tulane, when you look at the dynamics of the program, look, you're a private school, so you don't have the biggest fan base. It's also a nationwide school. You're not just pulling local Louisiana people to go to Tulane. I mean, a huge part of the student body is from New Jersey and the Northeast. But with private school, you've got a lot of successful alumni, so maybe you don't have the biggest fan base, but you do have some guys with some pockets, and that's pretty good for the NIL world.
Yeah, our alumni base, like you said, we draw people from the Northeast, from California, from South Florida, from Chicago. I mean, we've got alumni that are all over the world, and so maybe it makes it harder at times to just see everybody or have everybody come over for a spring practice or a spring game. We have to sometimes get on a plane to go see some of the people that that we are affiliated with at Tulane, but our alumni base is strong. They're well connected. They're successful. I think one of the great things that we have to sell here at Tulane is not just you can play high level football, but what can a Tulane degree do for you? What can those connections do for you? And so that's awesome. The Hogs deal, Hogs for the Cause deal. I went out there this year on Friday night, and that was a good time, man. I went out one of the nights. I can't remember. I couldn't keep it straight, but I was one of the testers, the taste testers, and I was like, I'll do this any year y'all want me to. I'll sign up any time. But what a great event. What a fun time that was, man.
Yeah, there's just a sense, and look, I'm sure you being a part of New Orleans and being the former defensive coordinator there probably was a draw for you to come back. But there's just a sense of, like, the thing with New Orleans, people think it's really not that big of a city, and there's a sense of community where everybody, whether it be festivals, music, sports, everybody's kind of in on the same things. And it really seems like what I've noticed is, the move to the on-campus stadium, Uptown NOLA is super rallied around Tulane, and obviously, winning probably helps that as well.
Yeah, winning doesn't hurt. You're exactly right. I think something you said there at the start, I think New Orleans is a really big, small town. And you hear that said a lot, like, it is a big, small town. It's not a big city. And so you see a lot of the same people. The community is tight-knit. I think that really feeds into the fabric of the campus being back in Uptown on campus, or the stadium being back on campus in Uptown, and the local community. Also, I can remember a time when this campus, when the stadium was being built back on campus, and maybe there was some public resentment, or maybe like, do we want this brought back on campus from the neighborhood community? And now I think they tell you they love it because it's created a really fun vibe and a lot of excitement in the area. And the Tulane logo is strong. I can say this too. When I was here as an assistant, you'd go around town and you didn't see the Tulane logo everywhere. Now, I go out in town and it's like the Tulane logo's all over the place. You see people sporting it. You see the angry wave, which is a lot of fun to see the people of the community, Uptown, Greater New Orleans area really buy into the Tulane brand.
Yeah, I think it's interesting about Louisiana. Like, obviously LSU, everyone knows the LSU brand, but the suburbs like Metairie, Kenner, all that are pretty LSU heavy. But in the city of New Orleans, it's not as much like that. It's kind of a melting pot in there, and you got a lot of SEC transplants down there. But there is definitely big support for Tulane, especially in the city and Uptown. And like I said, I know the success breeds a lot of it. I want to go back. So I went through your coaching background. Look, people are going to be shocked, but I actually did some research before this. You have an incredible defensive background. Going before even you got to Troy, you were the defensive coordinator at Tulane. You did I believe you were at Ole Miss, my alum. Were you at Ole Miss for a year as the linebackers coach? Or was that 2018?
Yeah, I was there 1 year in 18. Yep.
And then you were at Kentucky, which is your alma mater, where you played football. And then you got and then you went to Troy. I guess was that 2021? You were hired by Troy, correct?
Yeah, December of 21, I took the Troy job. Was there 22, 23. Had a great experience there. Really, at the time, I was at Kentucky. Had been at Kentucky 19, 20, 21. The Troy job opened. I'd been an assistant at Troy years before that too. And Mark Stoops and I are good friends. And Mark and I sat down and talked, and he kind of talked through the pros and cons of taking a head job. I was very happy at Kentucky. I wasn't necessarily looking. I wasn't looking for a job. I could have had the same job I was in for a long time and been very, very happy. And then the opportunity to be a head coach came up, and Mark and I talked. He said, "Look, you're a defensive-minded guy." He's like 2/3 of these hires. Everyone wants to hire the sexy offensive coordinator. And he said, so if you can get one of these jobs and you feel strong that you can win where you're going and you think you might want to be a head coach, you need to go do this. And so after we talked, I kind of thought through the whole process and thought, all right, I do think I want to be a head coach. I do think we can win. And so we took that jump, and it was a great experience and had a blast. I've been very grateful to be around some awesome people. I mean, Mark Stoops, you talk about Ole Miss, Matt Luke is as good of a human as you're ever going to come across. And obviously didn't have the on-field success that he wanted to, but Matt, you cut Matt open and he bleeds Ole Miss. I mean, he loves the place. Neil Brown, I worked for at Troy. Rich Brooks, Dave Adolph, a lot of really quality people have helped me get to where I'm at. I can promise you I'm not self-made.
No.
It's been a lot of people help me get here.
Well, yeah, I could say personally, and I mean, I was happy to see, I'm thrilled you're in Tulane and NOLA. Obviously, Mark Stoops has done just such a great job at Kentucky. I mean, the way he stabilized that program, I mean, they literally win 8 games every year in a good bowl. Obviously their football tradition was not necessarily the best historically. He almost got, that was a crazy deal with the A&M job. I'm sure, not going to ask you about that, but that could have affected you a little bit. I'm glad you're in New Orleans. But regardless, I'm sure that was a great background to learn. I want to talk a little bit about your time at Troy because, look, you had double-digit wins back-to-back years, and the Sun Belt is an incredible league now. The growth of the Sun Belt the last few years, and adding App State and Marshall and James Madison now, and the year they just had, and then obviously you look at the, University of Louisiana Lafayette's had, Napier tore it up there, but they've had a really good program. That league is deep and tough, and week to week you get challenged. The depth of that league is no joke, and to win double digits back-to-back years and win that league twice in a row, I hope people realize how tough of an accomplishment that was. Can you talk a little bit about those teams?
Yeah, we walked in, the previous team had been 5-7 when I got there. Some good players were on the roster. The previous head coach before me, his name Chip Lindsey. He and I are friends. We actually spoke earlier this week, and Chip had left some good players. Like, they had recruited well, and they just lost a lot of close games and had some outcomes not go the way they wanted. And really, when we got there, it was about setting the culture, changing the mindset, creating a little bit of a toughness and a blue-collar mentality where we do things with a chip on our shoulder with an edge. And, our first year there, we started 1-2. We played game. My first game as head coach, talking about Ole Miss, was against Ole Miss. I think I went viral for losing my mind on the officials on a missed call that they actually overturned after I lost my mind. So, but we lost to Ole Miss, won our FCS game. My third game as head coach there, we lose on a Hail Mary to App State right after App had just beaten Texas A&M. And you're going, all right, first-time head coach, we're off to a really fantastic 1-2 start here and lose the third game on a Hail Mary. And then we won 11 straight games. And they weren't always pretty. We beat Army that year 10-9. We beat Louisiana Lafayette 23-17 after being down 17-0. But what happened was our kids started to buy into that just keep fighting, keep scratching, keep clawing, and good things will happen. And so was very fortunate to be a part of turning that program around and getting it back to where it belonged. That league is challenging. Like you said, App, Marshall. We went back-to-back games. We played App, all right, and lost to the Hail Mary. The next week, in App had just beaten Texas A&M. The next week we played Marshall, and they had just beaten Notre Dame. And it was like, okay, is the Sun Belt like just a P2 conference all of a sudden? Like, we're just beating all these teams left and right. So really challenging league, good football, quality coaches, a lot of good players. That year we went to go play Louisiana Lafayette. I walked out pregame. We were like 7-2, I think. And I walked out pregame, and we're playing down in Lafayette. And I looked across the field, and I thought, is this a Sun Belt team or is this like an SEC West team? Because these guys were huge. They were just really physical, big, strong, athletic-looking dudes. And so that league's definitely improved. It was a great experience in that league. Keith Gill's the commissioner in that league. The Sun Belt's housed here in New Orleans, and Keith does a great job, and a lot of quality people in that league.
Yeah. I'm buddies with the assistant commissioner, Travis Llewellyn of the Sun Belt. He was a fraternity brother of mine at Ole Miss, and there's actually a quick.
Travis is awesome. I like Travis is a real deal.
Yeah. So the day you referred to, there was that day in the Sun Belt when Marshall beat Notre Dame, and then I guess it was Georgia Southern beat Nebraska. And then App State beat A&M all the same day. It was like the best day ever in the Sun Belt. And he had just gotten like a new dog had showed up, and he named him Sonny after the Sun Belt after that day when they won all those games. So I thought that was fun story I want to share. But look, I love it because you're a coach and you're never going to do the moral victory thing, but you're being hard on yourself on that 1-2 start. I mean, your defense gave Lane Kiffin's offense a ton of problems in that Ole Miss game. I remember that was a lower scoring game, especially by Ole Miss's standards, and you lost to a Hail Mary on App State. I mean, I don't know. I've seen worse efforts to start a career. We'll put it that way. But I want to discuss. Look, college football. The game's changed so much with the up tempo, the no huddle, the RPO, the spread offense. Your defenses have some like crazy good stats, and it's kind of, I don't want to say a dying breed, but like you literally had one of the best defenses in the country the last 2 years. How have you evolved against the spread offense to have this much success?
Yeah, I think some of it starts with how you play offense, and then two, I'll say this: like you can even look at Ole Miss's success, and Ole Miss is known for their tempo and their pace and being wide open and how fast they play, and they getting some wide sets and open sets. But really, Ole Miss has run the football really good. Like they run the ball really well. And so what I would say at the end of the day, man, teams that win in college football, they still can run the ball. Now, does that mean they line up in 12 personnel with 2 tight ends? Maybe not. But I think you still have to be able to run the football offensively. If you run the football offensively, it helps your defense because you're taking a little time off the clock, you're letting the clock run, and you're resting your defense a little bit too. And then two, defensively, our mindset, it starts with how do you limit explosive plays. I'm not a great tennis or pickleball player, but I'll play it enough. And if you can just get the ball back over the net the other time and see if the other person will screw it up. And so on defense, our mindset is, don't give up the big play. Keep the ball in front of you, get the ball down, and see if the offense can go on a 17-play drive, because not many of them can. A lot of them are going to screw that up. And so just cover people down, keep the ball in front, tackle well, gang tackle, and then schematically do some things a little bit different in some situations that throw people off that maybe they're not anticipating or that really suit your play style well. And so it's something you have to think about, and every year is different. You got a different team every year. Like our team here right now, it's a little bit different than what we had at Troy. So you always have to adapt to who you have and what you have. But playing really good defense does seem to be less and less common, but I think it's still important to be in a great team.
Well, you're inheriting a good one too, because Tulane's played some great defense the last few years under Coach Fritz, and they've had an excellent D line too. I mean, I remember the Ole Miss game last year. Ole Miss had like 86 yards rushing on 28 carries because they were getting just hammered at the line of scrimmage by that Tulane defensive line. How do you feel about your defensive unit this year?
Yeah, so up front we got Pat Jenkins back and Eric Hicks back. Those are 2 household names in the D line that are big, physical guys that play a lot of football. Pat's notorious for the safety in the Cotton Bowl against USC, and Pat's a local guy, went to John Ehret High School. Those 2 guys being back is a big deal. And we've added some pieces to reinforce the D-line. Linebackers, I think, are going to be solid. And then really we had a ton of losses in the secondary. The secondary, we really only have 1 returning starter. We went out in the transfer portal and I think helped replace some of those losses. And then I like some of our young players. We got some young guys here that I think are really high-ceiling football players, guys that have a lot of room to grow. And so there were some losses. We lost a safety in the transfer portal. We lost 1 D lineman, 1 edge rusher. We lost 3 or 4 guys right when I got here. I didn't even really taken the job yet. These guys were kind of already going in. That's the nature of the world we live in now. Anytime there's a coaching change. But I do think we've retooled, we've reloaded, and I feel like we've really put ourselves in position to play quality defense. And what's unique is the defensive structure that was here was really Willie had hired a guy that coached for me. And so there's a lot of carryover from maybe some terminology, and the kids haven't had to learn as much terminology. We're maybe doing a few new things and a few things differently schematically, but there is a lot of similarities too.
So your coaching style, obviously you focus on the defense. So you're pretty hands-on with the defense, and then do you let your offensive coordinator just call plays and run the offense?
I'm pretty hands-on with all of it. Yeah. So I don't call the game on defense. I make sure I'm the head coach of the entire team. I sit in defensive meetings, offensive meetings, special teams meetings. I know enough to be dangerous about all 3 phases of our program. I'm not. Some guys are maybe one side of the ball and they just bunker down and only do that. My first year as head coach at Troy, I probably did that. I probably just spent most of my time with the defense and really kind of lived in there. But really last year, I felt like the world had slowed down for me as the head coach, and I was able to become better at knowing our offensive systems well, knowing our kicking game. I already knew that well because I've been a former special teams coordinator. But I think where I've really grown as a head coach is I sit in the offensive meeting room where I visit with our offensive staff enough to make sure that we have a really good formula for how we're going to win the game and how we want to play based upon who our personnel is. And so while I'm a defensive background and I'm a defensive guy by nature, and if I was an assistant coach again, I would be a defensive coach. I'm really in the weeds in every part of our program from a play call standpoint.
Well, Tulane on offense, obviously Michael Pratt, 3-year starter, set a lot of records at Tulane, hoping he makes it in the NFL. Had a great career. Obviously replacing him, not going to be the easiest, but I think Tulane's well positioned to.
Yeah, Pratt, awesome player, fantastic teammate. I've gotten to know Pratt well. The thing about Pratt that's so cool is not only is he a good player, but he's a great locker room guy. You guys gravitate towards him. We've got some quality guys in that quarterback room. Ty Thompson transferred from Oregon. He was a highly touted recruit, was Bo Nix's backup. Kai Horton, who was Pratt's backup and played in the Ole Miss game last year. Kai's still on the roster. Darian Mintz is a youngster that we got that I really like. And Kellen Tasby's a freshman. Right now, Kai and Ty are kind of the two that are out in front. We'll see through a couple weeks of training camp where those guys are at. I think we can win with either one of them, which is exciting as a head coach to feel like you've got two guys that can help you win. And but losing Pratt is a big deal. I mean, he's been a starter here for 3 or 4 years, and he's been kind of the one constant the last couple of years around here because from the 22 to 23 team, they did lose a lot, and Pratt was kind of the one guy that was the glue guy.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something that's really important that I've actually talked to with a lot of G5 people. Hardly anybody has two good quarterbacks they can rely on in the G5 because the transfer portal stuff, and that's a huge luxury because people get banged up in the football season. It's a long season, and it's physical week to week. So, I mean, I think that's just an unbelievable luxury.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to have that depth at that position is huge, especially – like you said, you want to be able to run the quarterback some, and if you only got one, you're a little bit more worried about running the quarterback because you can't put the next guy in. But excited about both those guys. We'll see who wins the job. They're competing really well with each other and doing a good job of doing it the right way, and they're supporting each other well.
Yeah, Kai played. So the Ole Miss caught a break that Pratt was out last year in that Week 2 game, and Kai Horton played in the first half. He torched Ole Miss and lit them up, and then Ole Miss, Pete Golding at halftime, made adjustments and just started blitzing the crap out of him in the second half, and he made some mistakes. But I was really impressed by what I saw from him as a backup. I mean, honestly, Ole Miss got away with one in that game in New Orleans last year. They easily could have lost it. Tulane was winning at the half. Looking at y'all's schedule this year, I love that y'all have such a challenging first 2 weeks. The opener, or actually Week 2, second game, Kansas State coming in for an 11 a.m. game in Ullman and NOLA. That's going to be that's going to be a heck of a matchup.
Yeah, I'm praying for extra heat, extra humidity that day. Our guys hopefully can be prepared for that. But we open with Southeastern on a Thursday night, and then we play Kansas State, then we play Oklahoma, and then we play Louisiana Lafayette, that's a challenging non-conference opening slate. There's no layup in there. And so the Kansas State game's one a lot of people have circled. It'll be a marquee matchup. They're a really good football team. They got a good young quarterback. Chris Kleiman, their head coach, does as good of a job as anybody in college football, I think. He's the head coach at North Dakota State for several years and won several national championships there. It'll be a tough opening month, and we got to get ready for it fast because there's not going to be any gimmies in there. And
then you look at I went through the American Athletic Conference, and one of the top, if not the top, G5 league. Memphis is supposed to be pretty good this year. South Florida last year, really improved, took some strides. Coach Jeff Traylor's done phenomenal work at UTSA, and I know you're familiar with them because you beat them in that bowl game 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember that, and they had a super high-powered offense, and you held them to I think y'all held them to 12 points or something. I remember that being incredibly impressive, but how are you feeling about this league this year?
Yeah, the league's challenging. There's really good coaching. You hit on Jeff. Silverfield does a good job at Memphis. I mean, there's really good coaches in this league. I mean, Tom Herman's at FAU. There's a lot of guys that are proven at a high level and have won a lot of games and in great locations. And so the league's challenging. The players are good. A lot of great resources in this league. You know, we play several teams that you look at them on paper, you're like, man, these guys they got better players than you realize. And so it's going to be a good league. It's wide open, I think. A lot of good teams in it, a lot of good coaches, and we've got to really be prepared each week because it's challenging.
I'm just curious where you kind of mentioned it earlier. Big changes in college football going to the 12-team playoff this year. I assume you're all for that and like it, obviously.
No question. I think it's great for the game. I think access is good for the quote-unquote G5s. You know, I think making sure we get one team in there is a big deal. And really, you know, there's been a lot of talk this summer or spring about some people have said, like, well, this team doesn't play the same level of football as that team. Well, there's been plenty of G5 teams go in those games and win, just like Tulane versus USC. There's been plenty of Power 4 or Power 2 teams go into those games and get blown out too. And so I think access is great. I think it creates great fan interest. You know, nobody's ever said, like, I wish they'd cut the NCAA tournament games down. Like, I wish they'd play less. And I think more football is good football. Like, I think it's good for football. I think it's good for our game. And I think there'll continue to be adaptations and changes. And, you know, you may see the regular season get changed, how it gets played in certain ways. But I think, you know, expanding the playoff is good for our game. It's good for fan engagement. It's good for our players. And so I'm excited about it. I think it's good for all of us.
Yeah, and so the top G5 team guaranteed to get in the playoffs. I have a question on that, too. You just mentioned how good the playoffs are for football. On the G5 level, I along with many people, kind of as a talking point, have speculated this. Why do you have any opinion on them ever doing a G5 playoff? Because it feels like the bowl game thing is tough in this day and age because all the transfer portal stuff's going on. But, like, I feel like they're missing a huge opportunity to have a G5 playoff because I think the ratings would be huge and people would love it. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, you know, it's been talked about a lot. Really hadn't gone too far down that because it's not something that's even formally been presented. I know it's been kicked around a lot. I've been focused on trying to win our conference and see if we can get in the playoff. You know, and so that may sound like coach speak, but it's like there is no G5 playoff, so I'm not saying really on my head. If that came up, it'd be something I'd have to consider and work our way through that. But my focus has been on how can we win our league, how can we get into the playoffs, how can we do those things, because I want to go compete against the best and the highest, and that's sort of our goal. And so that's where our focus has been at in that whole process.
Okay, well, and then also you mentioned you obviously had a lot to consider when you took the Tulane job. Did your past time in New Orleans and your love for New Orleans influence that? Obviously,
no question. My wife and I enjoyed our experience here. My two oldest kids were born here. I've got twins that are 11. They were born at Ochsner here in New Orleans, and so this is home to them. And so just, you know, the old adage, if you love New Orleans, it'll love you back. Like, man, how can you not have fun here? How can you not enjoy it here? You brought up Jazz, the video you released on Jazz Fest.
Yeah,
like, yeah. I mean, like, I got to take my kids to go watch the Thursday Widespread Panic and.
Oh yeah! Oh wow! You don't go down that rabbit hole with me. I'm like a psycho. Like, I'm one of the biggest Panic fans of all time.
Are you? Yeah.
Oh yeah! I'm like 200 shows. I'm like 200 shows in. It's bad.
I'm like probably like 15, but we went to Widespread. Got to take all four of my kids on Family Day, Thursday, opening day of Jazz Fair. I think it was Thursday. But go watch Panic, and then got side stage passes for Chris Stapleton, and then got to go watch the Rolling Stones. And it's like, how can you not have fun in this city? And then it's like, and then you brought up Hogs for the Cause, and there's just always something to do. There's so much just culture here, and you know, if you're a bump in a log, don't come to New Orleans because it's not going to suit you very well, you know. And so this is a place that you have to engage with it, you have to love it, and I'm just passionate about what this city has to offer because my family's enjoyed every part of New Orleans.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you mentioned that if you love New Orleans, it'll love you back. And I know what living down there is like after doing 6 or 7 years, and it's like it's the most fun. The food's the best. The music's the best. The culture. Everybody accepts you for who you are. You can just be organic. But then, there's some infrastructure and some other issues you deal with, but it's like everybody knows what they're signing up for and embraces it. It's kind of like part of what I feel like is living down there. Well, awesome. Well, Coach, I want to say this was so much fun having you on. I'm definitely going to try to make a Tulane game or two this fall. I always try to, support the program and have been just really enjoying their success the last few years. And, Willie Fritz he did the job he did there. And obviously he's at Houston now in the Big 12. But, I feel like you've definitely probably inherited worse situations.
Yeah, I've walked into worse situations for sure. There's no doubt. And I'm grateful for what was done the last couple of years. I'm excited about what's going to happen in the future. And, man, look forward to hosting. Anytime you come down, you're always welcome. We'll get you on the sideline. We'll get you around wherever you want to go and come hang out, man.
Heck yeah, we'll do it. Well, Coach John Summerall, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Wake Up Mintzy. Good luck. Roll Wave this year. Can't wait to follow and support Tulane football and follow your journey down there. And, I was already, we kind of had some mutual friends and stuff. I was already a fan, but when you brought up that panic, now I'm really in. So.
They didn't play Coconuts. I was disappointed.
They played it. So I went to Red Rocks a couple weeks ago, and they played Coconuts on the Sunday.
Got it.
I did.
Yeah.
I did Memphis, Red Rocks, and then I might be going to Nashville next weekend. Like I said, it's bad. But,
that might didn't really sound like a might.
There's no might about it. It's happening. It's got to get it in during football season. We're super busy up here, so summer's when you got to see the music. So, but we'll look forward to looking up with you in New Orleans. Thank you again for giving us your time, and I appreciate it because I told you 9:20 and it's 9:35. So. All right, thanks to Coach John Summerall. Follow him on Twitter. Follow at Greenway Football and Barstool NOLA. We've got great relationships with everybody in New Orleans up here at Barstool and love supporting it. All right, thanks to Coach John Summerall. I'm going to get Tyler Moody on here to talk to me for a few minutes before we close this thing out. That was freaking great. I really appreciate it. Look, like I said, some creative direction for Wake Up Mintzy. We're going hard at football season. That's what we're doing going forward. And, we've got some more big guests lined up. I'm going to definitely try to run down UCF coach Gus Malzahn. Had a lot of fun with SJ Tui. I've got a lot of other lines out there. So we're going to keep these big guests popping. We're going to talk the game. I'm obviously not going to talk the gambling side of it with Coach Summerall. We're going to get in on that. Tulane plus 350 to win the American Athletic Conference Championship this year. They're the second favorite behind Memphis. Moody, do we have you today? Don't hear Moody. Okay, well, a few Barstool things to get into. The Jerry Bonds home run derby, awesome 2 nights ago. Thought they crushed it. Yesterday, shout out Corey Rutledge. I mentioned the Jazz Fest video all getting released. I know people were laughing at me because it was 3 months later. We had to edit that thing and send it in like 7 times because of copyright music stuff. But ended up, Dave and Big Cat loved it. So more video logs of Mintzy Tour are coming because, hey, if it gets a good response, it's all about the clicks in this game. You got to give the people what they want. Today, I came in with that ice cream sign. Mitzi Madison rolling on right after the yak. We've got my second grade test is serving ice cream and making correct change. I'm hoping there's like a Mintz funny thing play off my name with that, but that'll be a lot of fun. The Open Championship started today. Justin Thomas 3 under. Big surprise there, him leading. He's been struggling lately, so good to see him playing well again. He's kind of fallen off the last year or two after being one of the top guys in golf for a while. Major League Baseball starts their second half tomorrow off the All-Star game. I know Moody's fired up about that. I'm thinking about getting in on an Astros futures bet if it's not too late because they've been hot. They're 37-20 in their last 57 after a bad start. They're like 16-1 last I checked. So kind of looking at that on DraftKings as a possible future. Some more fun stuff next. Barstool always rolling. We got Camp Barstool next month. Excited about that. We're going to do some Office Olympics or something for the Olympics. I have no idea what we're going to do, but I'm sure we're going to do something. And, there's more stuff coming next week. I've got Taylor McGregor going to join us in studio on Tuesday, the Cubs reporter. She was part of the first ever all-female broadcast team for Major League Baseball game last week. So pretty cool American history there. So, as always, ton of fun stuff going on. We're fired up. Football season's coming. SEC Media Day is one thing I thought that was interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of stories coming out of there this week in Dallas. Nick Saban didn't pick Bama to make the SEC championship game. Their players responded in kind, said, he's not around for practice, so he should keep his opinions to himself, which I thought was funny. And then Lane Kiffin and Paul Feinbaum had a really interesting interaction where Lane was on with Feinbaum, and Feinbaum said something about it'd be funnier if I help get you fired. And Lane shared a story that I blogged yesterday of when Lane got fired in 2011 after the Arizona State loss for USC on the tarmac in the airport. Paul Feinbaum was on game day that morning saying he was the Miley Cyrus of college football and a joke and needed to be fired. And Lane said apparently Lane's athletic director and president at USC saw that. And the next thing you know, he was getting fired that night. And I'm not saying Paul Feinbaum's the reason he got fired. There's a million other reasons, I'm sure. But Lane was saying something that I wanted to share here, and that, then his journey wouldn't have been what it is, and he wouldn't have gone to work for Nick Saban for 3 years and learned, and then he built up through Florida Atlantic, and now he's entering his fifth year at Ole Miss, making like $9 million a year, and he's got the number 4 preseason team in the country. So it's just that I wanted to share that because it's an interesting thing where in life so often bad things happen. I mean, that's part of life. It's a roller coaster, but they kind of, a lot of times if you have a decent attitude about it, they end up being a blessing long term, and it's you just kind of have to have a good mindset on it. Shout out to Lane Kiffin for taking the high road, not going off on Paul Feinbaum, because, he certainly had grounds to do so. Well, shout out as always to Dude Wipes, cleaning up messes, and Stella Blue. Check out the Stella Blue Cold Brew. They were tearing it up on the Amazon sales. Summertime, my personal favorite, the blueberry, Stella Blue. Amazing coffee. Big day at Barstool ahead. Like I said, tune into the Mintzy Madison live after the act. You're going to see me serving some ice cream, making some crack change. I'm going to do better on the second grade test than I did first grade. And like I said, once again, just thanks to Tulane coach John Summerall. That was awesome having him on. Love my relationship with Tulane and love what they're doing for New Orleans, bringing some big-time football to Uptown, and certainly going to be supporting those guys this year. We're going to get out of here. Let's have a hell of a weekend. Like I said, Taylor McGregor in studio on Tuesday. I got some more big ones lined up. I'm just going to – look, football season's coming. The guest list is about to freaking pop. We're going to do a bunch of gambling talk. We'll talk some fantasy football. All that's coming. We got to give the people what they want, and that's what we're going to do here on Wake Up Mintzy. Let's have a day, boys. Thanks again for joining us.